How's it all? Your aunt putting a metal bed frame together. I'm gonna give you the hacks on how to put this together in less than an hour, man. Here we go. Fitness, foodies, and the fabulous absurd. From burpees to Camus, you're never gonna know what you're gonna get from your burpee yoga uncle. Well, I ain't gonna lie, man. The first thing you wanna do is read the instruction. And somebody was trying to put it together, but they were having a hard time putting the screws in. And I'm going to give you a hack on how to put the screws in. Now, the very main thing you need is a lot of space to set up the frame. And what you really want to do is look at the pictures. And the frame has numbers on them. And you want to kind of like sort of lay out all the pieces where it's going to be at before you actually assemble it. That particular corner one, my friend assembled it already, and then they quit basically because they couldn't get the screw in. And again, I'm going to tell you the hack to get the screw in. This particular bed frame we got, I think they got it from Amazon. I'll put the link in the description below. So you can see what I'm doing now is literally setting up how the frame is going to be. I'm going to put all the pieces all around it so I know what to do. And also, by doing this, I want to ensure that the pieces that I put where the locations are is actually the pieces that's actually needed, and not that I don't install the wrong pieces because they all look kind of similar, right? So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm going through the frames and setting it up right now. So this particular one is called the Best Price Mattress 14-inch metal platform bed frame, and then this is a queen size one. So as of this particular video, it costs at about $120 on Amazon. I'll put the link down below, but it's a pretty sturdy frame. At first, see, I'm just setting it up. At first, I thought that it was like Charlie May because the screws didn't fit in there. So here I am, gonna try to put in the screw, and here is they have all the tools. They have a hex wrench and an actually ratchet hex wrench that comes with it. I would suggest that after you finish building it, that you somehow store those two tools along with the bed just in case, right? And so here I'm doing some of the setup. So this is the part that is like super important. So the screw in there, I'll put in the screw and so making sure it fits. So now what I do, and you should do this for every single screw you're gonna use, right? So I'm gonna see if I can screw it in there. And it's very tough to screw it in there because it's metal on metal, right? And the groove in there is going to be tighter on the receiving end of the other part. So it's actually super hard to screw it on. So I'm going to try to do it here. And you're going to see that I'm going to have a hard time doing it. And that's what my friend was trying to do. They actually were able to screw one screw in, but not the other screw. So you can see that's what I'm doing right now. But it's not going in. So this is the major hack right here at 3 minutes and 20 seconds. What you want to do is take a screw by itself, and on every single place where you're going to put the screw, you want to pre-screw it in there first. At least a couple of grooves like that. And so it creates the grooves in there. It's going to be super tight. Once the groove is created, you can start putting it in, and it will just fit like perfect. And you screw it in. And you see, I'm going to have no problem putting in the screw now. Well, I have problem holding into the tools. But early in the morning, my coffee is not in my system yet. What are you going to do? See, I can actually use my hand to screw it in. And see, it goes in right now, right away. There it is. It's in already. You can see my hand's not holding it. It's in, right? So you're gonna use the ratchet. I didn't use the ratchet. I used my stupid muscle, which I don't have a lot of, and I screwed in there, and it's tight. And now I go, wow, smooth sailing, man. I'm gonna get the other part. And this is where my friend messed up. The other hole, did I pre-screw the screw in? I the heck did not pre-screw the screw in. So I'm gonna attempt to do it just like I did from the first screw without screwing it in. I'm thinking I can do this, and you're gonna see me struggle for like a long time. I can't screw it in there. No matter how much I tried, I couldn't do it. I was so stupid. It wasn't until after this screw that I realized that every single screw I'm going to screw in, I need to pre-screw it in first, and then it was smooth sailing right after that. So literally right here, for the last, I don't know how many minutes I was trying to put it in there, it just does not fit. And that's where my friend quit. and then didn't want to build the rest of the frame. As you progress through the video, you'll see that every single piece of component that I'm going to install together, I pre-screw the screw in first. And that is going to be the hack. Without this, it's virtually impossible to install this. Okay, so remember to especially metal and metal, you want to pre-screw it in there. If you don't pre-screw it in there, it's going to be super hard to do. Okay, anyway, I'm going to do the rest of the video. You see what I'm doing. So the two main things: number one, you want to lay out all the pieces before you start screwing them in, because otherwise you make a mistake. And number two, pre-screw the screw, especially for metal frames, because if you pre-screw the screw, it works much easier. There you go. This is the ratchet part that I'm using. Well, if you're down this far, please hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much, and enjoy the building of the frame. It's a very sturdy frame. Very impressed with it. And plus, by the way, you see the holes on the bottom in the middle of this particular pole. That's for the head, the head piece of the bed. So that's actually the front of the bed. So just so you know what the holes were for, because at the beginning I didn't know what those holes were for. I was like, what are those holes for? And I realized, oh, that's for probably the headrest. Anyway, I digress, man. I burpee to eat and I eat to burpee, and I'll put the video up on somewhere in the corner of me doing Supermans. I put Superman shorts up every day, man. Bless up.